Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning into this video on Pythagorean triads. So we learned in a previous video what Pythagoras Theorem is. It's that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now, if you can find three numbers, a, b, and c, to substitute here to make this statement true, then we say that they form a Pythagorean triad. So an example of a Pythagorean triad, 3, 4, and 5 form a Pythagorean triad because 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared. Another example, 5, 12, and 13. They form a Pythagorean triad because 5 squared plus 12 squared equals 13 squared. Now, it's not easy just to look at three numbers and tell whether or not they form a triad. There's no quick way to determine. You just have to say, does a squared plus b squared equal c squared? So another example of a Pythagorean triad is 7, 24, and 25. Because 7 squared plus 24 squared is 625. And 25 squared is 625. 7 squared plus 24 squared equals 25 squared. That's why these three numbers form a Pythagorean triad. So let's look at examples of three numbers that don't form a triad. Well, most sets of three numbers won't. So 7, 8, 9, for example, is not a Pythagorean triad because 7 squared plus 8 squared doesn't equal 9 squared. 7 squared plus 8 squared equals 113. But 9 squared equals 81. That's why they don't form a triad. For example, 10, 15, 20 is not a Pythagorean triad because 10 squared plus 15 squared does not equal 20 squared. You can easily check that with your calculator. Once again, it's not that easy to just look at them and tell whether or not that it forms a Pythagorean triad. So another example, 6, 10, and 18. Just some random numbers I thought of. 6 squared plus 10 squared doesn't equal 18 squared, so these three numbers do not form a Pythagorean triad. So the significance of Pythagorean triads is they help us determine whether or not a triangle is right-angled. It turns out that a triangle is right-angled if and only if its lengths form a Pythagorean triad. So we know if the triangle is right-angled, then a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The opposite is also true. If a squared plus b squared equals c squared, then the triangle is right-angled. So let's look at some examples of this. So let's look at these two triangles here and determine whether or not they're right-angled. So I just want to point out, it's not enough just to look at this one and say, oh yeah, it looks right-angled, therefore it must have a 90-degree angle. No, we need a definitive way to determine whether or not it is right-angled, and we're going to use Pythagorean triads. So here, the two shorter sides, a and b, are 8 and 10. So 8 squared plus 10 squared gives you 164. 13 squared is 169. So here we have 8 squared plus 10 squared doesn't equal 13 squared. In other words, a squared plus b squared does not equal 13 squared. So therefore we can say with 100% certainty that this triangle here is not right-angled. Okay, so that's the black triangle done. Let's turn our attention to the red triangle and determine whether or not it is right-angled. So 8 squared plus 15 squared, if you put that on your calculator, you get 289. 17 squared is also equal to 289. So here, 8 squared plus 15 squared equals 17 squared. In other words, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So Pythagoras' theorem holds this is a right-angled triangle. So, of course, the right angle is opposite the longest side. This being the longest side, it means that the right angle will be here. This triangle is right-angled. How easy is that? So if we want to find a member of a Pythagorean triad, we just use the same process that we used when finding an unknown side. So let's say I'm going to give you a set. That's what the squiggly brackets mean here. Let's say 6, 8, and k forms a Pythagorean triad? What would be the value of k? Well, here I've put it in order for you. K is just going to be the longest side of a right angle triangle, and 6 and 8 the shorter sides. So to find k, I'm just going to use the formula I did to find an unknown side. So it would just be the square root of 6 squared plus 8 squared. So I'm adding here because I'm finding a larger number or a longer side, and that just equals 10. So if I had a right angled triangle and 6 and 8 were the two shorter sides, 10 must be the longer side, just like you did in the previous lesson. All right, thank you so much for tuning into this video. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.